The night was dark, the sky was clear. A plane, a Boeing 777, climbed into the air, leaving the lights of Kuala Lumpur behind. This was Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, a routine red-eye to Beijing. On board were 239 souls, crew, passengers, dreamers, workers, families, individuals. They were suspended between one world and the next, comfortable in the hum of the engines. They settled in for the long flight ahead, unaware that their journey would never reach its destination. This flight was about to deviate from the known and chart a course into the deepest, most profound mystery of modern aviation. The world is full of straight lines, scheduled departures, expected arrivals. MH370 was about to break from that line. The aircraft itself was a marvel of engineering, one of the safest and most reliable jets ever built. The Boeing 777 had an impeccable record, workhorse of the skies, trusted by airlines and pilots across the globe. This particular plane, registered as 9MMRO, had flown thousands of hours without incident. Pilots know these machines. They understand their language of beeps and alerts, their groans and strengths. But on March 8, 2014, this machine would fall silent. It ceased to communicate. The plane simply vanished, not with a bang, but with a quiet and unnerving silence that has echoed for more than a decade. The flight began as countless others do. At 12:42 a.m., MH370 lifted off from runway 32, Kuala Lumpur International Airport. The captain was Zahari Ahmad Shah, a veteran pilot, over 18,000 flight hours, well-respected, a family man, home-built flight simulator. Beside him sat the first officer, Fariq Abdul Hamid, a young pilot, final training flight on the 777. The cabin crew prepared for the 6-hour journey. The passengers settled in, the plane climbed steadily. A programmed line on a map pointed northeast toward the Vietnamese coast. Everything was normal, 38 minutes of flawless flight, following its assigned airway, communicating with air traffic control, reached cruising altitude, 35,000 feet, a serene river of air, checklists, monitoring systems, cabin lights dimmed, most passengers trying to sleep, their minds already in Beijing, tapestry of lights and ocean below, routine. The first sign of trouble was not an alarm, but a silence. At 1:19 a.m., a final, calm message was transmitted. The voice, believed to be that of the first officer, said, "Good night, Malaysian 370. These were the last words ever heard from the flight. 2 minutes later, at 1:21 a.m., the aircraft's transponder was switched off. Identity, altitude, speed. Just as it was about to be handed over to controllers in Ho Chi Minh City, MH370 disappeared from their screens. It had become a ghost. On the ground, it was not immediately a crisis. Glitches happen. But Vietnam saw no plane appear. Malaysia saw it disappear. Calls echoed into a void. Other aircraft tried. No response. Minutes turned into an hour. The plane was truly gone. Protocols began to grind into motion. Far too late. The final verbal communication from MH370, "Good night, Malaysian 370, was chilling in its normalcy. It was a standard sign-off. The kind of phrase a pilot says hundreds of times a year. Calm voice, routine delivery, yet it marked the end of the known. Moments later, the plane's transponder stopped transmitting. This was not a malfunction. The transponder was deliberately turned off. Someone in the cockpit, with knowledge of the aircraft's systems, made a conscious decision to make the plane invisible to the civilian world. It transformed a possible accident into a suspected act of will. While invisible to secondary radar, it was briefly tracked by Malaysian military primary radar, which bounces radio waves off objects. Instead of continuing to Beijing, the aircraft made a sharp, deliberate turn to the southwest, flying back across the Malay Peninsula, under the control of a skilled pilot. Not an out-of-control dive, a navigated flight, but flying blind to the outside world. It navigated through established waypoints. It flew up the Strait of Malacca, then turned again, this time to the northwest, heading out over the Andaman Sea. At 2:22 a.m., it flew beyond the range of Malaysian military radar and disappeared for a second time, this time for good. It had crossed into the vast, unmonitored ocean. The trail went cold. Hours passed before the world knew. Families in Beijing grew anxious as delayed flashed. After sunrise, Malaysia Airlines confirmed it had lost contact. A shockwave around the globe. The initial search focused on the South China Sea, but authorities knew the plane had turned back and flown on. The initial search was a portrait of confusion. Based on secondary radar, ships and aircraft from a dozen nations converged on the South China Sea, scouring for wreckage, an oil slick, or floating debris. The world's media descended. But they were looking in the wrong place. While they combed the waters east of Malaysia, the secret of the military radar data was held back. The delay was critical. By the time the search was redirected to the Strait of Malacca and the Andaman Sea, days had passed. Debris had drifted. The true breakthrough came from a satellite. Inmarsat discovered faint, automated signals, pings, simple electronic handshakes between the aircraft's satellite data unit and the ground station. It tried to log on once an hour, 7 times. The final ping at 8:19 a.m., more than 7 hours after radar disappearance, proof the plane continued to fly for hours. The pings didn't give position, speed, or altitude, only distance from the satellite at each ping. Analysts drew circles. At each ping, the plane was somewhere on the corresponding circle. By analyzing tiny Doppler shifts, they ruled out a northern path over Asia. It had flown south to one of the most remote places on Earth, the southern Indian Ocean. The effort shifted west of Australia, hundreds of thousands of square miles. A needle in a haystack, mid-storm, thousands of miles from land. Australia led a massive international effort. State-of-the-art aircraft flew grueling missions, crews scanning waves where debris could look like whitecaps. The search from the air found nothing. When the aerial search proved fruitless, the effort moved beneath the waves, shifting from floating debris to the fuselage and, most importantly, the black boxes. The flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder. Their beacons pinged for at least 30 days. A race against time began. Towed pinger locators were dragged slowly, listening for faint signals. For weeks the world held its breath. In early April 2014, HOPE, the vessel Ocean Shield, detected acoustic signals in the same area over days, seemingly narrowing to the 7th arc. But the ocean is noisy. The signals were weak and faded, likely beyond beacon battery life. Autonomous underwater vehicles mapped the seafloor in detail, thousands of meters down, over brutal terrain, underwater volcanoes, deep canyons, jagged ridges, only a few square miles a day. For nearly 3 years, specialized ships swept 120,000 square kilometers, mapping unseen parts of the planet, finding shipwrecks, submarine landslides, bizarre formations, but no piece of MH370. Costs rose into the hundreds of millions. The toll on crews was immense. In January 2017, with no new credible evidence, Australia, Malaysia, and China suspended the search. The ocean kept its secret. The failure to find the aircraft forced investigators back to the data. Every piece of information, every signal, every calculation was scrutinized. The 7th arc remained the only real clue, yet thousands of miles long. The assumption, fuel exhaustion leading to a steep, uncontrolled death dive, crashing close to the arc, guiding the underwater search. But what if that was wrong? What if the plane glided? If a pilot was still in control at the end, a Boeing 777, an efficient glider, could have traveled another 100 miles or more after engine flameout, placing wreckage outside the search box. The ATSB reanalyzed the final satellite transmission, a partial ping suggesting sudden power restoration after failure, consistent with twin-engine flameout and emergency turbine power. It strongly supported fuel exhaustion, without proving if the final descent was controlled or not. The deliberate turnback, disabled communications, and steady southbound flight point away from catastrophic mechanical failure or electrical fire, which would likely create erratic paths. The steady, navigated course suggests a mind in control, executing a plan. The primary theory, deliberate depressurization rendered passengers and crew unconscious, then a remote end in the southern Indian Ocean. The motive remains a troubling mystery. For more than a year, there was no physical evidence. Then, in July 2015 on Reunion Island, thousands of miles from the search area, a man found a flaperon. Serial numbers confirmed it was from the missing Boeing 777, a watershed moment validating the southern search. Oceanographers built drift simulations, factoring currents, winds, and tides, to estimate entry zones months earlier. Models supported the area, with wide uncertainty. Over years, more than 30 pieces were found, on African coasts and western Indian Ocean islands, cabin interior fragments, an engine cowling section and other parts, Mozambique, Tanzania, South Africa, Madagascar. Each piece confirmed the plane's fate and suggested a violent impact with water, yet none could pinpoint the main wreckage. The southern Indian Ocean remained vast. In 2018, Ocean Infinity launched a new search on a no-find, no-fee basis, deploying multiple AUVs simultaneously in a higher probability area just north of the original zone, mapped with unprecedented speed and detail. Months of work found nothing. The search concluded mid-2018. Once again, silence over the southern Indian Ocean. the puzzle remained incomplete. Behind the analysis and the searches lies profound human loss. 239 people boarded Flight 370. They were not just a number, parents, children, spouses, friends, from more than a dozen countries. The majority were from China, returning from holidays and business trips. Others from Malaysia, Australia, India, France, the United States. Artists, engineers, young couples starting their lives. 2 infants. A decade of uncertainty. Without a body to bury, without a crash site, without a clear understanding, families remain in limbo. Some hold hope, others face an incomprehensible death. They battled with the airline, with governments, and a world that moved on. They formed support groups, shared pain, fought to keep the search alive. Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, his family suffered loss and suspicion. They defend his character, saying he was incapable of such an act. With no cockpit voice recorder evidence, the theory remains a theory. And the stain causes pain. MH370 haunts us, not just an aviation puzzle, but a human tragedy on a global scale. The search is a search for closure. The world owes it to the 239 and those they left behind. Their story is not over until the final chapter is written. More than a decade has passed since MH370 vanished. Today, on September 29, 2025, the plane still has not been found. The mystery endures, a persistent question mark. It fundamentally changed aviation, exposing a vulnerability. A modern aircraft could be made to disappear. The industry moved, airlines must track aircraft every 15 minutes, new systems harder to disable, future recorders designed to eject and float. Official searches are suspended, but efforts continue. Ocean Infinity intends to try again, armed with new tech and improved drift analysis. Malaysia says it may support a new search if credible evidence appears. Independent investigators never stopped. The legacy is humility. Despite our technological prowess, nature's vastness remains. Some questions may never be answered, some mysteries may endure, yet the search goes on because finding the plane matters. To families, to aviation safety, to all of us. Only the wreckage and its black boxes can replace theory with fact and silent speculation with truth. Finally bringing Flight 370 home. The sky is watched more closely now, forever changed by the ghost that still flies in our memory.